We come in our studies in Exodus today to chapter 4 verses 29 through to chapter 5 verse 21. And these verses describe the beginning of Moses and Aaron's ministry, and frankly its complete failure. By chapter 5 verse 21 the situation in Egypt is worse than when they arrived on the scene. Yet things had begun so well. The people of Israel had responded as they should have done to Moses and Aaron's news in chapter 4 verses 29 to 31. Despite their great difficulties and their needs, they rejoiced and gave thanks to God. Many Christian leaders have been appointed to lead God's people amid such high hopes and confidence in God. However, the situation soon changed for Moses, and often the same is true for us today. Strengthened by the people's response, the two brothers went to Pharaoh, and immediately they made a mistake. In chapter 4 verse 18, Moses had been given the words with which to address Pharaoh. But the words which Aaron says to the king are quite different. In place of a polite request is a firm command, as we see in verse 1. Pharaoh's response was therefore predictable, for none of us like being told what to do. And Pharaoh would have thought, who is this God who dares make such demands of me, the God King of Egypt? Moses and Aaron quickly realized their mistake and made their second request in far more polite terms, but the damage had been done. Just like so many before and since, Pharaoh responded by meeting what he saw as unrest with increased repression. This is fully described in chapter 5 verses 6 to 19 as the result. The early support given to Moses by the people was soon followed by rejection and blame being heaped on the two brothers. The Israelite leaders both ignored Moses and Aaron and then blamed them. There is something very familiar to us about all of this. The glory of God is often only achieved through suffering and hardship. Frequently difficulties come right at the beginning, when the impetus of a work has not been established. A work stopped before it is begun is a great victory for Satan. However, it is not this precise point which is being taught here. Rather, the passage teaches us that it is God's purpose to surround the path of his people with difficulty, as we see from chapter 4 verse 21. The Lord often sets his final glory against the background of dark despair and opposition on every side. He does this to display his glory more fully. Moreover, just as Moses was driven to the Lord by such an experience, so God often intends to make us come in total obedience to him and to look nowhere else. Sadly, the response of God's people to Moses and Aaron is also paralleled in many Christian leaders' experience. And the Lord Jesus had a similar thing happen to him. Just see Mark 11 verse 9 and 10 and then 15 verse 13. We're also expected to remember his words, a student is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master, which we find in Matthew chapter 10 verse 24. What happened to Jesus will often happen to us. What the people had to learn was that the promises of God and the call to Moses had not changed. The people had to realize that to expect blessing without trial is seldom God's purpose. Thus, in their rejection of Moses, they showed the poverty of their own faith. Some believers collapse under difficulty. Others see the difficulties as opportunities for God to manifest his glory. This passage shows that the second group are in the right.